Let's do, excuse me. I told my wife, she was like, you used to never let people in. I was like, yeah, I know, but I said, when I get a break, I'll let them in. I said, but sometimes they're at the window, and I said, it looks like, one of the cats trying to come in, and then I get distracted, and so I just do it. So what I might do next semester is just like block it. So that way, like I'll have after 15 minutes or so, I'll go. All right, here we go. Let's do some, although I try to give you guys ample time, today I may try to speed up the process. I'm not saying I'm going to not give you any time, but just be be aware that we're trying to get in as many examples as we can, right? Okay. Start, and it's an open-ended question. Tell me what you see. If you see something, say something. Start, finish. Open-ended conversation. Start, finish. Feel free. Phones, start, finish pictures, video recordings, I don't care. Start, finish. Let's do the obvious stuff. Like, I'm not talking about 1 degree of this and then right back. Like, let's just do the thing that moved the most. Start, finish. Middle, you guys got a view? Start, finish. Open-ended question. If something moves significantly, tell me what it was. Start, finish. 30 seconds, go. Oh, look at that. Oh, there's a good girl right there. There's a good girl. Yeah, you are free to get up and move, guys. This is a good way to practice. I was on my left leg. Pivoted on my left leg. Does anybody need to see it again?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't even think. Well, that was a patella reflex, quick like answer right there. Let me do it for. This is all new to me, so I'll try to remember the. Start. Finish. Just trying to bet. Try one more time. Try one more time. Try one more time.
Yeah, you so.
Oh yeah. I felt bad. I almost ran over there. All right, guys. We will start off with a friendly game of yes or no. Why? Because I can. I can ask these questions any way I'd like, as long as it's in English. Yes or no? Right hip movement. Yes or no?
No. I would say no, so if I'm wrong, I'm glad I'm wrong. Say it.
That's a good outlook.
Thank you.
Left hip movement. Yes or no?
Yes.
Who feels more confident or comfortable saying that I know, not right hip, I'm not quite as sure, but I'm more sure that that was left hip as compared to right hip? Anybody want to put more stock in left? What about more stock in right? Anybody feel more comfortable about right? Okay. So you can see where part of, and that's fine, that's normal. Nobody feel bad about answering incorrectly. Again, it doesn't count. But this is where I struggle to work through these issues, right? Because it's usually a split, like it's usually an even split. Like usually it's not like 90%, it's usually 50-50, okay? There was left hip motion and there was no right hip motion, okay? But let's go into why. It's because both of my hips, do we agree, are anatomical position, right, to start? And then if I go back and say, okay guys, who's still in anatomical position? My right hip's like, dude, I'm still looking at the front of the right socket. Or in other words, if my right hip was in a cast, I could totally do this movement. Yes, ma'am?
So is that kind of like when you turn, you're saying, okay, right hip, move back to anatomical?
We could play that game. Yeah, we could play that game. So watch, I did this motion, right? Okay, start, finish. Right hip, go back to anatomical, and the right hip's like, dude,
Wait,
I'm already there. This is like a country song. I know, that's front of the pelvis, anterior, interior leg spine, those guys. Let's look at it like this. We gotta give him a name. What are we gonna give our penguin's name? Did we give him a Stewie? I like that. So let's stew over this question with Stewie the penguin. Did you see what I did there? So Stewie the penguin is looking forward. Well, Stewie the penguin's now looking to you, and guess what? So is the front feet. Like there was no change, right? Does that make sense why the right hip stayed in its anatomical position? Now what did stay in the anatomical position? The left. So Stewie's looking at my right and my left front of my thigh, the anterior part of the thigh. Well, now Stewie's only looking at the right anterior part of the thigh. He's now looking at the medial part of the left. Hey, left hip, how would you move to go back home? I'd have to internally rotate to go back home. That means I had to externally rotate when I left. This was left hip external rotation. And right hip, nothing. Cool? Was there pelvic girdle rotation? Yes or no? Anybody team yes?
Throw it.
Was there pelvic girdle rotation? Okay, I got some no's. Do I have any yeses? Okay. The answer is yes, there was pelvic girdle rotation. Specifically, left transverse pelvic girdle rotation, specifically because this left hip external rotation. Pelvis spin to your right. Right transverse pelvic girdle rotation because of left hip external. So that would be like me taking the basketball and instead of spinning it with both hands, I just spun it with one hand.
So, is there something like that where it's not as clear? Like,
Where it's what? Wait, say that one more
Where it's
time.
not as clear?
It's very clear.
Well, not as like,
It's my job to teach you.
not like
how it's-
standing front and rotating here. Like
Well, what I'm trying to understand, what do you mean standing in front and rotating? I am, like,
But like rotating, like picking your leg up off the ground, or,
oh, you mean it looks like it's moving and it is?
Yes.
The easy ones?
yes.
Okay.
Was the other ones like what we just did, is there always pelvic girdle rotation when you're doing hip movements like that?
When the hips are, and I don't even say when the hips are on the ground, because sometimes my knee can be on the ground and I can rotate the pelvis. When my lower extremity is anchored, right, and it's fixed, pelvic girdle rotations have to occur about hip movements. But that doesn't mean pelvic girdle rotation has to occur about both, right? We've done this before in other ways where this one stayed in anatomical and this one adducted, right? You remember that? It's the same concept, except instead of frontal, or we've done this one a lot, instead of sagittal, we've done that one a lot, right? Where the anterior is because of one hip. We've done that. All I did was just the transverse. Yeah. Does that make sense? Good. Follow-up question? In this example. Pelvic girdle rotation.
But the left one,
Okay, remember that this is not my frustration to you. This is sometimes my brain wants to sprint, and I need to. I want to kind of like put on the like a restrictor plate in NASCAR, like to slow down my brain. Pelvic girdle rotations are just spins, guys. It's just, is it spinning forward, back, right, left frontal, right, left transverse? It's independent of what spun it. So in other words, whether I have right transverse because of just the left, right transverse because of just the right, or right transverse because of both, it's right transverse pelvic girdle rotation. Because of left hip this, or right hip that, or both hips this, but we don't say left, right transverse pelvic girdle rotation, or we don't say right, left lateral, like we don't incorporate the side of the hip into the PGRs, into the pelvic girdle rotation. It did or it didn't. You know, to a child, the merry-go-round is either spinning or it's not. They're either having fun or they're not. They don't care if it's you, me, both of us, what your name is. They just want to spin on the merry-go-round. So Stewie the penguin just wants to spin and have some fun. And so it doesn't matter if my left hip did it, my right hip did it, or both hips. That's a hip conversation. Is the basketball spinning because of joint motion? If it is, how is it spinning? Anterior, posterior, right, left lateral, right, left transverse. And then the follow-up was what's spinning. Does that make sense? And if that's not where you were going with that question, I apologize. Give me another chance to answer. No. Give me another, because some other people may have the same question. So that was not where you were going with that?
No, I got yes.
It was?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Is there anything you could have said about the foot for an example, or was you looking at something else?
Okay. Forgive my, this is where being a teacher and a coach kind of cross, right? What do you mean by foot?
Like, is it?
What joint motions we have? What foot, what? Foot flexion?
What?
Ah! Yeah. And you see, the lesson here is we don't want to say things like a leg. We don't want to say things like a foot. We want to be specific and say, could there have been ankle? Could there have been subtalar? Could there have been knee? Could there have been hip, right? That's the lesson in there. Okay? So rephrase your question with the context of joint specificity.
Could there have been ankle or subtalar?
Outstanding. Could there have been? Yes. Was there? I try not to. And not only that, remember, I'm not going to ask you things that like tweak, right? So like if I start here and I do this, I mean, I'd have had to have done something like this. Start, finish. Or start, finish, right? My toes were on the ground, now my toes are off the ground. Subtalar question. Start, finish. Start, finish. So, could I have? Yes. Could I have with how I did it? No, because there wasn't anything obvious for me to ask. So that's an example of two different questions that could have been branch timeline from one question. So I just want to make sure I answer them both. Could I have as in, could you do something? Absolutely. Could I have as in, did I do something? No, I didn't do anything. And again, I'm not talking like what's that meme with Leonardo DiCaprio where like he's pointing at the TV? You know, I saw it, right? Like, I will never ask you something that's not fair at all. It's always going to be obvious movements. Okay, great question. Let's keep it going. Anybody else for that before we move on? Okay. All right, what about something like this? I'm going to try not to have the props. Let's see if we can see it on our own. Okay. Start. finish. Start, finish. You ever had an Etch-a-Sketch where you draw something and then you shake it up? So sometimes to not confuse students, I would do silly things like start, finish, and then I'd shake up the Etch-a-Sketch and come back. Start, finish. Okay. Start, finish. Right side. Start, finish. Open-ended conversation. If you see something, let me know what you saw. Oh, I'm super exaggerating. Yeah, just to try to help you. Yeah. What? Good catch. Good catch. Good catch. Who thinks they're more likely to try to move around this test than the first one? Good, you should. And I think knowing that a lot of other people are going to do it too, maybe you don't feel as, we just need someone to break the ice.
Don't worry.
There you go. Just get up and move about the country. All right, here we go. Start, finish. I'm just going to tell you some things that are going on.
Okay.
Left lateral pelvic girdle rotation from start to finish. That was because of left hip abduction, right hip adduction. I wouldn't do this on the test, but for those of you that are playing at home, we could totally probably go into a little subtalar joint kind of action here. But I totally wouldn't do that on this test. If I'm doing something like this, I'm asking you about the pelvic girdle and the hands that are moving, okay? So the reason I said that is because there's some students that are like, ooh, what else is happening? So I'm never disrespecting other things that may or may not be happening. I'm just respecting the question that I'm asking you in terms of, hips or pelvis. So just because I don't ask about something doesn't mean it did or didn't happen. It's just we analyze motion joint by joint. So if I'm asking you about hip or hips, it does, like my mom used to say, don't worry about what your brother's doing. If I'm asking you about knees, don't worry that the hips are moving. If I'm asking you about ankles, don't worry that the knees and the hips are moving. If I ask you about ankles, just focus on the ankles. Cool? Any questions about that? So what about coming back? Let's do coming back. I think too many times we start off in anatomical and then we deviate out of it. But what about coming back? If we come back, we would just have right lateral to, right? Left lateral from, right lateral to. And our hips would be, well, this one's already abducted, so this would be left hip adduction. And this would be right hip abduction. And that's the key, two, because, and that's why we try to, Campbell, start from the beginning, real cool. That's why I try to teach you these terms, because many of you only familiar with abduction being like that. And so to have a structure that's abducting, when you're like, well, how could that be abducting? You didn't do that. And it's like, well, you adducted from anatomical, so to get back home, you have to abduct to anatomical. Makes sense. The only way to get back home is to swing the other way. Okay? Cool? All right? All right. Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain that again? Because I kind of confused myself with the average and average.
Okay. Okay. So you're confused with which hip is ab or abducting? Okay. No problem. And no, that's common. It's common. So let's play a game, because isn't the Saw movie out? Yeah, the new Saw movie. Doesn't he always want to play a game? Something like that? I don't know. I've never seen it. I'm joking. All right, let's try this. Good Lord, Bob Ross would be crying right now if he saw my heart. Okay, this is my attempt at a pelvis and two hips that are like anatomical. Okay. So what I'm going to try to do is, I'm going to start here, and we're going to pretend that the hip joints never left anatomical. Okay. But I know they did, right? And I know this photo actually represents the new position of my pelvis. It's just because I'm not made of, because I didn't get my letter at Hogwarts and I'm not magical, my hips can't go along for the ride. I fall over, right? So for my pelvis to be able to do this, I have to move my hips. And how I move my hips was this left side abducted. So what I want you to do, trust me, do left ear, left shoulder, left ear, left shoulder, left ear, left shoulder, and look at the pelvis as if left ear, left shoulder. Look at the pelvis. I'm sorry, right ear, right shoulder. Wait. Yeah, right ear, right shoulder. We're mirroring each other, so I'm trying to get it right. Right ear, right shoulder. Look at this hip, how it's abducted. Does that make sense? It's abducted relative to the pelvis. The pelvis is never lost. Right here is abducted. So in essence, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? I can do it. No, I can't. If I could do a cartwheel, I could do this. This is the same thing as this. I'll do it one more time because that was just ridiculous. This is the same thing as that. But because I can't friction, but my only option is to move the sockets because I can't move the hip balls. I've got to move the sockets. And so the illusion is when I'm trying to do this plus this, much better, right? Much more athletic look. I get this. Cool? Awesome. Oh yeah. 220 minus my age right there. Question?
What was the, like, the tilt for your nose, is that right?
Left lateral. Well, left lateral when I went in here, right lateral to come back. Left lateral when I did this, right lateral when I did this. And if I go more, it'll still be right lateral. Left, right. And when you're like, Campbell, when are we gonna ever do stuff like this, right? Unless I'm in the school play, you do it all the time. You just don't realize it because your trunk sways back the other way. The trunk doesn't go along for the ride to make it obvious. But every time you shift weight from one to the other, your pelvis is doing this. Someone had a question?
Well, we ever had immediately, like you said, left lateral hip rotation, correct? Will it ever be medial
What a great question. What a great question. Okay, so here's the answer to that. You have, and this was weeks ago, so I don't expect anybody to remember this conversation. You have different verbiage for things you have two of versus things you have one of. And the reason is because I can't have a right of my right, because the right of my right is the same as the left of my left. Okay. But things we have one of, this is my right ear and my left ear. Okay? So because we have one Stewie the penguin in the pelvis. Okay? We have one Stewie. Medial and lateral do not exist. Only lateral, like bilateral axis. So in other words, Stewie can do a cartwheel to his right or a cartwheel to his left in the bilateral axis. Notice we don't have a bimedial axis. So we don't have the opposite of. We just have the socket that can, because remember, whatever the right does, the left's got to go along for the right. So right lateral and left lateral is literally the one thing spinning to its right or to its left. There is no medial. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
You're welcome. You ever wonder, like, does someone just make all this stuff up? The answer is yes. Okay. But it's a great question because we're trying to make sense, we're trying to make rules, and we're trying to be consistent. So I love your thought process. Well, if we have lateral rotation, why not medial rotation? Great question. And that's why, because we just have one pelvis, and the pelvis can spin anterior, posterior, right, left, lateral, right, left, transverse. That's actually why we have right and left. Right and left could mean do a cartwheel to your right, cartwheel to your left. Spin to your right, spin to your left. But you're not going to do a front roll to your right or to your left. You're not going to do a back roll to your right or to your left. Outstanding question. All right, who's next before I do another example? Anybody? Okay, how about this one? This is an oldie but goodie. This one shouldn't take us too long. But I guarantee you I'm going to have something on the test about it, okay? Guarantee. All right, I'm going to start here, and I'm going to do this. Start. Finish. Let's see what you do. Do y'all need to see it again? Okay. If you do need to see it again, just let me know. Tell me what you see. One more time? Not a problem. This is where I start. This is where I finish. That's Yeah, those are nice. So I have, right, I have some actually first when I was there, the top part of the frog. You won't care. You won't care. I see retirement not too far away. I'm just on confident. But I always appreciate someone asking. One time, halfway through a syllabus lecture, a student was like, 6 years ago, saying, and I love this attitude that I see in all the students. I don't know if you realize this or not, but your shirt's on. What? Told my wife. Hanger. She ended up dropping by. And it was funny because like you could be so observant about clothes, but you can't be observant about clothes. Come on! All right, guys, here we go. Gotta move, gotta move, gotta move. Posterior pelvic girdle rotation because of right hip extension. Start, finish. Good? Okay, so I started here. So the pelvic girdle rotation would be posterior. And what caused it was my right hip extending. My left hip could do like a Broadway musical. It doesn't matter. My left hip could it's only until my right hip decides to bring it back. Or here's a better way for some of you, athletes, personal trainers. I know we have a gauntlet in here. Wouldn't you be working like your hamstrings and your glutes on your right side to go down and come up? That makes sense? So that's another way to look at it. Because I'm working the muscles on the right side, I'm not coming back up until they make me come up. Like I'm not coming back up until those muscles say, come here, dude. That's kind of what we're getting at. And if you're like, well, Campbell, why don't you incorporate the muscles? We will. It shall come. But doesn't it make sense, like before we add another variable of muscles and contraction types and work, man, we have to get the motions down. Like we have to be able to see these things before we even have the conversation on what was responsible for the things that we're struggling to see. And if you're struggling to see it, that's my problem. And we're going to make it happen if you come to class like you're doing now. You know, help me help you is what I always try to say. It's the students that never come to class, never come get help, and then they're like the Pikachu meme when they get their grade. They're like, you know the Pikachu meme I'm talking about? Like, what? I don't understand. I watch lecture 5 for 15 minutes. And the answer is that this stuff is not easy. It's not easy. In fact, you should use that when you have family members giving you a hard time about, oh, you major in kinesiology, what do you do, learn to shoot free throws? Exactly. This is not easy. But I think people have a false sense of how easy it is. And the answer is because they don't know any better. It's not their fault, they don't know. But how hard can kinesiology be? Your cousin Carl's a personal trainer, and he didn't even go to college. Great. What did Carl get certified through? You know, Toys R Us, Target online certification. What I'm saying is that this is, you will be on another level, but it's the level you should be at. is the level all those other people should be at. But we just kind of let it slide. Because they may look great. They look like they know what they're talking about. They look like $1 million. Until that person who looks like $1 million is working with a 65-year-old for the first time in their life who has medical issues. And they're having her do box jumps on the first day. Because that's what worked for me in high school. We don't do bro science in here. We do real science in here. All right? Now let's go to war. Get on, right? Doing like gladiator, right? Rally in the troops. All right, y'all want another one? Y'all want another one? All right, let's do another one. How about a hard one that's going to be on your test?
Heard.
You're like, you go, Stewie.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Although I think I might have given you guys this one before, but we might do a variation. Hey. Same start position as we did when I came up from the one-legged come-upper thingy. Right. Start. Stewie is looking straight at the floor. Now Stewie is looking at the front of class. I'm looking at myself in the video in my form, and I'm like, man, the Russian judge is really going to dock me on points for this. Start. Stewie is looking straight at the ground. Finish. Stewie is looking at the front of class. Now, obviously, Stewie is not upright while he's looking at the front of class. Stewie's laying on his side, but he's still looking at the front of class. Does that make sense? Here's what I want to see if you can tell me. Can you tell me, can you identify pelvic girdle rotation? Here's a hint, there was some. And then, even harder than that, can you tell me what joint motion was responsible for that pelvic girdle rotation? If you can work through that problem, everything else should be little putts. You know, this is a par 5, but as you saw from my first test, not all the questions are par 5s. You know, we only put a couple of them. So I'm like, dude, what's a par? I don't even play golf, but it's like when the hole's far away. It goes harder, right? So for an 18-hole course, you have a couple holes that are hard, but you have some that are easier. And honestly, that's where I judge. I don't like to commit to help. I like to see if you can help yourself. I look at some of those easy questions, and if you get those easy questions right, I'll work with you all day long. I can understand what some of those hard questions get. But if we can't even get the easy ones right, we have issues. Yeah, absolutely. Start, finish. God, you stretch, man. Start, finish. Woo! You can feel the stretch where the motion is happening. You can feel the stretch where the motion is happening.
You could feel the stretch where the motion is happening?
Yes!
Really?
And the Lord said, you can feel the stretch where the motion is happening now.
Okay, so. Right now.
I love coming to America. I think that's one of my favorite things. After class, maybe original artwork. Someone's like, why do you draw a solid Hey, were the kitty cats helpful today?
Yes.
Good, good aura, good energy. 5 minutes left.
Okay, legislation. That was the problem.
Start. Finish. First of all, did my left hip move?
Yes.
Let me clarify. Was there left hip joint motion? No.
They said no.
Okay. If my left hip would have spun, like I think some of you're not alone, there's other people that thought the same thing.
Okay.
This is what would have happened. Stu would have stayed looking at the ground, and I'd have just done this.
Okay.
Does that make sense? If I just did left hip external rotation, Stu would still be staring at the ground. What I did is this. My left hip is still in anatomical position. It went along for the ride. Start, finish. Stu's like, dude, I still see your toes, man. I saw your toes here, and I saw your toes there. There's no way we have differentiation of the femur and the acetabulum of the hip joint, okay? It's an illusion. It looks like it's moving, but it's not. Okay? What was my pelvic girdle rotation? Left transverse pelvic girdle rotation. Remember, Stu, if I spin to my right, that's the same kind of spin, even though it might feel a little different, than if I did this. Spin to my right. So Stu seeing the ground doesn't matter. Stu's still like, dude, I can front back, I can right left lateral, I can right left transverse. It's a local reference. I like Stu, what a great name. So left transverse pelvic girdle rotation. Now here is where your instinct, that Pavlov, you're salivating. Just because Stu left transverse pelvic girdle rotate doesn't mean it had to be from our traditional anatomical position kind of stuff. Our hip is flexed. If I would have, do we agree, and I'll try to speed it up, guys. I rarely keep you at time. Does everybody agree, God, I need to stretch, that this is internal and external rotation? Does everybody agree? And does everybody agree that this is in Stewie's frontal plane? Stewie sees this internal and external rotation. Now, it's in the femur's transverse, but Stewie sees frontal. Does that make sense? So if I were to do that internal and external rotation, this would actually be internal and external rotation of the hip. Stewie would see it in his frontal plane. This is right hip horizontal abduction. Because from here to there was the same as when we did this question from here to there. The right hip's perspective. Feel that stretch? Well, guess what, guys? I feel that stretch.
Oh, you said you would feel it.
Yeah. You feel me?
I feel it.
Was today helpful? All right, Monday is all about you guys.